Tonight, Silent Hour dives into a Gothic tale of obsession, where a young, innocent woman is pursued by an ancient vampire with one dark wish: to spend a single night with her.
You cannot love.
Yet I cannot be sated without you.
In a country manor house, young Ellen tearfully prays for a guardian angel or spirit to hear her call and come to her. A voice replies in an unfamiliar language, telling her that she is not for the living or humankind, and asking her if she will swear to be the one with it eternally. She swears that she will, and follows the voice outside, laying down in the garden. She begins to feel blissful pleasure, but soon screams in fear and agony as a horrific creature grabs her by her throat. Several years later, in 1838, Ellen awakes one morning and calls out for her new husband, Thomas Hutter. He is dressing himself for work and asks her what is troubling her.
The honeymoon was yet too short.
She laments that their honeymoon was too short and attempts to seduce him. But he tells her that he cannot stay, despite wishing that he could. He then declares that he must be off, and once he leaves, Ellen states that he has the position already and will be sent away. Thomas makes his way through the streets of Wisburg until he reaches his place of work, Nock and Associates. Thomas enters Nock's office and apologizes for his lateness, to which Nock replies that it is Providence. Nock congratulates Thomas on his recent nuptials and tells him that he has been corresponding with a foreign count who wishes to purchase a home in Wisburg. Thomas offers to meet with the count the following morning, but Nock informs him that the count has not yet travelled to Wisburg and that Thomas must travel to his homeland of Transylvania. Thomas agrees, stating that he will not disappoint. He asks for the count's name, and Nock replies that it is Orlok.
I am an appetite, nothing more.
The Silent Hunger. At the front, a name that defined terror. On the back, Orlock's haunting stare grabs every eye, sparking curiosity. Crimson bats streak across the sleeves, adding a touch of dark elegance. Slip it on, and carry a century of fear and history wrapped in comfort. Today only, 20% off plus free shipping. Hurry, own a piece of horror history before it's gone. Link in the description.
Thomas returns home in the pouring rain, picking a bouquet of lilacs for Ellen as he goes. He gives them to her upon his arrival, telling her that he will be leaving on a 6-week journey and that their friend Friedrich Harding has generously agreed to keep her at his home until he returns.
Throw them out!
Ellen grows upset at him for killing the beautiful flowers and urges him not to go. Later that evening, they travel by coach to the Hardings' home. Thomas drinks brandy and smokes cigars with Friedrich, while Ellen plays with his daughters, Clara and Louise, under the watchful eye of their mother Anna, her best friend. Thomas asks him to take care of Ellen while he is gone, as he fears her past melancholy will return. As Thomas sleeps later that night, Ellen cuts off a lock of her hair and places it inside her locket. In his office, Nock performs a ritual in which he writes a contract in his own blood. The next morning, Thomas prepares to leave. Ellen tells him that she is proud of him. She gives him that locket, telling him that it is a show of her utmost faith, and urges him to write to her every day, which he promises to do. Several weeks later, Thomas reaches Transylvania. He arrives at an inn and finds a crowd of gypsies gathered outside it, playing music and dancing. He gives his horse to one to be taken to the stable, and a crowd of them surround him as he approaches the inn. Once their song has finished, their leader laughs at him and the others join in, which confuses him. The innkeeper emerges and orders the gypsies to leave before telling Thomas that he brings trouble with him. Thomas tells him that he only wishes to stay for one night before continuing on to Castle Orlock. Later that night, Thomas enters the inn's tavern and the tenants view him with suspicion. An elderly woman leads him to his room and urges him not to go to Orlock's castle before handing him a wooden cross pendant and telling him to pray. Later in the night, Thomas is woken by noises coming from outside the inn. He ventures out and sees the gypsies travelling into the wood with a nude young woman on horseback. Thomas follows them until they reach a grave. They exhume the corpse, which they believe to be a vampire. Their leader drives an iron stake through the corpse, causing it to spit out a torrent of blood.
By the grace of God!
Thomas shouts at them to stop, drawing their attention to him. The next morning, Thomas awakes in his room at the inn, his boots caked with mud. He leaves the inn and discovers that the gypsies have left and stolen his horse. He makes his way to the Orlok Pass on foot, passing a wooden shrine before crossing a bridge. Later that night, he reaches a crossroads and is approached by a carriage pulled by 4 black horses, with no coachman visible. The carriage's door opens as if by magic, and Thomas climbs aboard. The carriage continues on towards Castle Orlock, with 3 huge black wolves chasing after it. Once the carriage reaches the castle, Thomas exists and approaches a large set of double doors. He raises his fist to knock, but like the door of the carriage, they open by themselves. He sees the shadowy figure of Count Orlok standing beyond an archway ahead of him and bows. Orlok turns and walks away, and Thomas follows him inside. Orlok leads Thomas up a stairway, telling him that he is late, the midnight hour has passed, and his attendants have all retired. Thomas apologizes for his lateness, and Orlok leads him into the great hall, where the table is set for a feast. Orlok orders Thomas to lay out the deed and sit. Thomas asks if he wishes to wait until morning, and Orlok urges him to do as he requests, insisting that Thomas address him as "my lord."
Yes, my lord.
As he sits, Thomas is disturbed by Orlok's sinister demeanor, deep, guttural voice and raspy breathing. The Count moves with unnatural speed, suddenly appearing behind Thomas and pouring him wine, which he orders him to drink. Orlok orders Thomas to eat, and as he begins to ask him about his marriage, the clock strikes the hour, causing Thomas to accidentally cut his thumb with a bread knife. Orlok urges him to take heed what he does, but Thomas insists that it is nothing. Orlok offers to ease his wound and invites him to sit by the fire. He does so, but notices a statue beside the fireplace turn its head and look at him. Shocked, he turns and sees Orlok approaching him and becomes consumed with utter terror. The next morning, Thomas wakes face down on the floor in front of the fireplace. He looks around, but Orlok is nowhere to be seen. He calls out for him, but receives no reply. He explores the castle, but finds it deserted. He enters the bedchamber that has been set for him and takes a mirror. Pulling open his shirt, he finds 2 strange marks on his chest. He then notices several live rats on the floor, which causes him to drop the mirror in fright, breaking it. Night falls at Castle Orlock, and Thomas meets with the Count again. Orlok signs the contract and presents it to Thomas to do the same, for which Thomas apologizes for his carelessness. Orlok notices the locket and asks if it is a token from his bride, which Thomas confirms. Orlok then asks to see it, and Thomas reluctantly gives it to him. As Orlok examines it, Thomas asks if he may post letters to her, and Orlok sniffs it, commenting in his mother tongue that it smells of lilac. Orlok then opens a small chest, overflowing with gold coins, taking a small sack of them and placing it in front of Thomas. Thomas signs the contract, and Orlok places his wax seal upon it, commenting that they are now neighbors. The next day, Thomas tries to find a way out of the castle, but finds several doors locked. He goes out to the courtyard and tries to leave through the doors through which he arrived, but cannot get them open. He finds another door, and breaks the lock with a large stone. He makes his way down a flight of steps into the crypt, where he finds several stone coffins and a large sarcophagus at the end. He approaches it and pulls the lid off, finding Orlok sleeping naked in soil, his body covered in maggots with rats gathered around him. Thomas recoils in shock before grabbing a nearby pickaxe to kill the Count. However, Orlok wakes and grabs it mid-swing before staying up to his full height, causing Thomas to flee in terror. Thomas runs through the corridors and locks the door behind him, and to everyone watching, we have a big favor to ask. Join us on Instagram. That's where we post exclusive trailers and sneak peeks before they hit YouTube. Your support there means the world to us, so please give us a follow. Later that night, Orlok sniffs Ellen's hair and telepathically communicates to her that her husband is lost to her, and she must only dream of him. Orlok approaches Thomas's bedchamber, surrounded by his wolves, and opens the door with sorcery. He approaches with his hand outstretched as Thomas lies terrified on the bed. As the Count stands over him, Thomas sees Ellen standing naked above him, with blood leaking from her mouth and eye sockets. Orlok undresses and climbs atop him, biting into his chest and sucking his blood. The next morning, Thomas wakes and hears a beastly growl. As the wolves gather at the window, he looks down to see a river rushing beneath him. Knowing that he has no other chance of escape, he leaps into it. Later that evening, Ellen is with the Hardings by the sea and asks if there has been any word of Thomas. Friedrich replies that there has been none. Anna advises that they must return home as it is near sundown, but Ellen asks to stay for a moment longer. But the moment is broken when they hear Ellen screaming.
New patient.
Yes, sir.
At his hospital, Sievers is approached by an orderly who informs him that a new patient is being stored downstairs. Sievers tells him that he has forbidden the use of the old cells, but the orderly warns that this patient was found at a Christmas market killing sheep with his bare hands and eating them raw. They go to the cell, where Sievers asks patient Knock who he is, only to receive a reply of no one and his servant. Knock has killed several animals, which he declares to be gifts bestowed upon him by his lordship. Sievers asks who his lordship is, and Knock replies that he is infinity, putrescence, asphyxiance, and devorance. And to everyone watching, we have a big favor to ask. Join us on Instagram. That's where we post exclusive trailers and sneak peeks before they hit YouTube. Your support there means the world to us, so please give us a follow. Later that night, Ellen is having another fit, and Sievers tightens her corset as Friedrich holds her down. Afterwards, Friedrich and Sievers retire to the drawing room, where Sievers informs Friedrich that Knock has been committed to his hospital, having gone mad. He also reveals that he lets out a mantra of "He is coming," identical to Ellen. He suggests that they contact a specialist, Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz, a physician and scholar whom he studied under in Zurich. Sievers states that von Franz has a brilliant mind, but has been tossed out of his university and laughed out of his home country due to his obsession with the works of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa and Paracelsus, alchemy, mystic philosophy, and the occult. In Bukovina, a young Orthodox nun is collecting firewood when she finds Thomas unconscious at the edge of the river. He is taken to a monastery where several nuns treat and pray for him, and a priest prays and douses him with holy water. Thomas suddenly wakes and calls out Orlok's name, and upon hearing it, the elderly Schema abbess speaks to him in Romanian. He tells her that Orlok is traveling to Wisburg, but she dismisses this, stating that Orlok must return to the cursed earth in which he is buried.
No, he seeks after Ellen!
As the Empusa crosses the Black Sea, Orlok rests within his coffin below deck and communes with Ellen that soon he will no longer be a shadow to her. Their flesh will embrace, and they shall be one. He then summons a storm to quicken his journey. At the monastery, Thomas mounts a horse and rides off, despite the novice's warnings that he has not yet recovered. Aboard the Empusa, Captain Yusu is informed by his first mate that something has happened to crewmen Vasiliev and Rudenko. In Wisburg, von Franz arrives at the Harding residence and orders that Ellen be untied. Von Franz declares that she cannot be clothed and orders the others to step away. He sits by her bed and confirms that he has come to help her. Von Franz asks her about her spells, which Sievers tells him have been occurring since her childhood. She confirms this, and he asks to describe them. She tells von Franz that her dreams grow darker and asks if evil comes from within someone or from beyond. Later that night, Ellen is placed in a trance, and von Franz examines her vital signs. Inspecting her eyes, he sees that her pupil is expanded and does not contract naturally to light, which Sievers declares impossible. Von Franz states that she has a second sight. He urges Ellen to speak, and she replies that
He's coming.
Who is coming to you, my child?
Speak!
I will not harm her!
Von Franz, Sievers, and the Hardings retire to the drawing room. He states that it is as he feared, that Ellen is cursed, perhaps by a demon. On board the Empusa, Yusu and his first mate throw a dead crewman overboard, and the first mate grabs an axe, declaring that he will end the plague and the devil on board before venturing below deck. Making his way through the all-consuming darkness, he approaches a large crate. Hacking it open, he finds it filled with rats. At the Harding residence, Ellen excitedly declares he is here and runs down the stairs and out of the house. She finds Thomas arriving on his horse, and he collapses exhausted onto the ground, causing her to run to him, hysterical with worry. Thomas is brought inside and tells Ellen that she was right. He feared he would never see her again, and that Orlok has her locket. There is a knock on the door, and Friedrich orders Hartmann, his butler, to answer it. As the knocking grows more frantic, Friedrich answers it himself and finds a policeman and dockhands there. They take him to the harbour, where the Empusa has crashed and now lies in ruins, with hundreds of rats spreading out of it. Later that night, Orlok stands at the open window and holds out his hand, its shadow stretching over Wisburg. Ellen and Thomas lie in bed together, and he begins to talk in his sleep. He orders to get off of him, declaring that he cannot breathe. Seeing Orlok in his mind, he pushes Ellen away in a panic. At von Franz's residence, Friedrich is in disbelief, declaring that he cannot yield to being haunted by a ghost. Von Franz replies that it is no ghost, for it manifests physically. Friedrich asks what it is, and von Franz states that its only desire is to consume all life on Earth, and it is a force more powerful than evil, death itself, the vampire, Nosferatu. At the Harding residence, Ellen rises from her bed, goes to the window, and opens it. Sensing a presence, she looks into the corner and sees Orlok standing there. Recognizing him as the creature who attacked her years ago, she tells him that she has felt him like a serpent crawling in her body. He replies that it is not him, but her nature. She calls him a villain for speaking such things, and he replies,
I am an appetite, nothing more.
The Silent Hunger. At the front, a name that defined terror. On the back, Orlok's haunting stare grabs every eye, sparking curiosity. Crimson bats streak across the sleeves, adding a touch of dark elegance. Slip it on, and carry a century of fear and history wrapped in comfort. Today only, 20% off plus free shipping. Hurry, own a piece of horror history before it's gone. Link in the description.
She states that he cannot love, and he confirms this, adding that he cannot be sated without her. He asks her to remember how they once were, and she replies that she abhors him. Enraged, Orlok tosses her to the floor, declaring her false. He tells her that he will give her 3 nights to give herself to him, promising that those she loves will suffer on each night that she refuses. She accuses him of reveling in her torment, and he tells her that on the 3rd night she will submit to him, or he will kill Thomas. The next morning, the hospital is overcrowded as citizens are desperate for medical attention, and police have been brought in to keep order. A nurse tells Sievers that the plague is spreading unlike anything she has ever seen, and he tells her that they cannot admit any more and that he has urged the city be placed in quarantine. At the Hutter residence, Ellen looks after Thomas, and he tells her that they must flee the city, but she replies that they cannot. She admits that she must tell him something loathsome, but he tells her that nothing she can say would shake him, for there is a devil in the world, and he has met him, and he has come to Wisburg for her. Ellen replies that she knows, which shocks and confuses Thomas. She admits that she knows Orlok and has brought his evil upon them. She tells him what she has never told anyone, that she sought company and tenderness and called out. It was blissful at first, but later turned to torture. Thomas does not understand, and Ellen reveals that Orlok took her as his lover then, and has now returned, having discovered their marriage. Thomas declares this impossible, but she tells him that Orlok stalks her in her dreams every night. She accuses him of prioritizing wealth and material belongings ahead of their love before falling to her knees and ripping open her dress, declaring that they should never have married, for they are already dead. She drops to her knees and convulses, and he makes to send for Sievers, causing her to crawl towards him, taking hold of his leg, and tauntingly states that he could never satisfy her as Orlok could. In his residence, von Franz reads the occult manuscript he found in Nock's office and learns that the Nosferatu can be destroyed if a fair maiden offers up her love to the beast and lies in close embrace with him until the first cock crow. Orlok arrives outside the Harding residence. Anna is woken by screams coming from the children's room and desperately tries to wake Friedrich, but to no avail. Rushing to their room, she arrives just in time to see Orlok kill Clara and Louise. The next morning, Anna, Clara and Louise are laid to rest. Friedrich is destroyed from having lost his entire family. Ellen, Thomas, Sievers and von Franz observe from a distance. Later, they all travel by coach. They make plans to meet at Harding's that night, go to Grunewald Manor and destroy Orlok's sarcophagus so that he will have no sanctuary. Once they reach his residence, Ellen asks to walk von Franz to his door. As they walk, she asks why all of it has fallen upon her. Von Franz tells her that in heathen times she might have been a great priestess of Isis, but in the modern world she has a far greater purpose. Ellen smiles and thinks him as a tear rolls down her face. Von Franz promises to keep Thomas at bay that night and urges her to go home and make sure he is in good health for their false hunt. Orlok looks out of the attic window. In her bedroom, Ellen lets down her hair and opens her window, telepathically communicating to Orlok that she is ready and bidding him to come to her. Thomas, Sievers and von Franz arrives at the manor and make for the chapel in the rear, which is overrun with rats. They remove the lid, and Thomas drives the iron stake into the torso of the occupant, who is not Orlok, but Nock. Thomas states that Orlok has gone to Ellen, and von Franz insists that they destroy his habitation so that he will have no sanctuary. Thomas argues that there is no time, but von Franz insists that there is no remission without her blood. In her bedroom, Ellen is now in her wedding dress and veil. She watches from the window as Grunewald Manor burns in the distance. Orlok enters her home and makes his way up the stairs, using sorcery to open her bedroom door. Ellen doesn't flinch. She allows him to bite her, drawing him in closer until the first light of dawn breaks through the window. Orlock's scream is inhuman as his body begins to disintegrate, but Ellen doesn't let go. She holds him until he turns to ash, sacrificing herself to save the town and the man she loves. The final shot is devastating. Ellen's lifeless body in Thomas's arms as the sun rises, its light casting long shadows over the broken town. Ellen's sacrifice becomes legend, a tragic tale of love, courage, and the cost of facing true darkness. To all our loyal fans, you are the beating heart of Silent Hour. A massive thank you for your unwavering support. A special shout out to Heather Hubbard for joining our Silent Hour community. Welcome aboard. And of course, a heartfelt thanks to Silent Hour Guardian, Diddy Criffield. Your support keeps us going. And don't forget, be unique, be bold, and be you.